I'd like to talk about now, though, is as we're talking, you mentioned earlier a phrase that would not be one of the guys who I would interview would talk about, which is wearing leather pants into a meeting with.
You don't have any guys that wear leather pants, Nick? This is very disappointing.
Well, I'm working on that, and I don't even I have to go get a pair of leather. I'll have to go buy one of those, so at least I could say I have done it, but it's not a common thing. But one of the things as we're sitting here is that the first half of this conversation, you sound like a senior executive running a billion-dollar business, and you have the acumen of any of the guys that I would normally interact with to have this conversation. But it's obvious that that's not you, Stacey.
Yeah.
You've worked in the two organizations that I know you've worked in, which was Heineken and Home Depot, both starting with an H, so I think there's a pattern here.
There you go.
Are extremely masculine cultures. So at least when I was there, the beer boy sort of thing was very strong. And Home Depot is about as guy of a culture as you could possibly get. But what's interesting is that I've never heard you grimacing your lot. Okay. At the same time, I would assume that you have suffered equally as anyone who was on the female side would probably deal with. So I'm just curious about, how has purpose been helpful to you as a woman in the role that you're in, these roles that you're in? What's that look like for you?
I think that because I think everyone is underestimated at different points in their life. I think we all have that human experience somehow, whether you're getting picked for kickball or you're playing sports or you're in grammar school, or you go through that awkward phase as a kid, or it's because maybe you are working in a female dominated company and you're a man or otherwise. I think most people can relate to this feeling of being underestimated.
Mm-hmm.
I have been underestimated a lot, and there's been a lot of skepticism, and sometimes that comes back to me. I remember when I joined, I don't want to out any companies, but certain roles that I've taken in certain companies, people said really not nice things about me, not knowing me, really nasty, who did she, how did she get that role? She doesn't deserve it. How she has young children, she'll never be successful. You actually have to work hard in this role. These types of things. I've had male executives ask me to get them a Diet Coke, thinking I was an administrative assistant.
Right.
Everybody has these stories. Many people have these stories, but I think somewhere along the line, that just started rolling off my back, and all I saw was opportunity. Because when the bar is that low, you can really blow people's hair back.
Oh, interesting. When people so underestimate you, it's so much easier to kick their butt.
Yeah, or just, that I kind of live for that, like, what just happened? When someone that they think couldn't add any value at all just helped them in some way that was deeply meaningful. And even I've worked in finance, I've worked in audit, I've worked in a lot of different functions over time. And even in the beginning, right when I joined Home Depot, we had this big issue that blew up, and we were trying to sort some things out. And I had spent some good time in supply chain doing audit work, and we were trying to figure out title transfer, risk of loss transfer, and when we would be liable for something. And I had done all these RevRec audits and revenue recognition audits in the past. And so I started mapping out, title or the risk of loss transfer. And I just remember a few people in the room started looking at me like, who is this lady? What? And then they went, oh my God, you're right. So that's not even a problem, because this is when the risk of loss transfers. And they just were like, aren't you the lady from marketing? Why do you know about this? So I don't know. I just, the more that we can have folks that look different, act different, be successful, the more we'll renorm the way people think about how folks can contribute and who can contribute, and the sort of basic human dignity and respect that we all deserve. Because a lot of times I do believe people don't realize consciously that they're being dismissive. It's underneath, it's deep within the way they were raised. It's an unconscious thing sometimes. So helping to bring that to the surface and then kind of write the new description of what these types of leaders can look like. I mean, I believe this generation will so significantly change the way we think about inclusive leadership. We complain a lot, you know, you read headlines in the media that we haven't made enough progress, women in the workplace, et cetera, et cetera. I remember years ago when The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel came out.
Yep.
I'm, you know, Ashkenazi, New York, my Jewish family's from New York. So this really resonated with me. And the first episode, I could barely watch it. I was so upset with how women were treated. I just couldn't stand it. It got so deeply under my skin. And then it occurred to me, if we think we haven't made progress, boy, are we wrong.
When you watched that, you saw the progress that had been made. Now, so you grew up Jewish, is that right?
So my dad's Catholic and my mom's Jewish. So we are inclusive of everything.
Okay. But of course, as a kid, that must have been just a double complexity, right?
It was fine when we were living in the Northeast. We had a little kerfuffle when we moved to Texas, where the Jewish thing was not so cool. But that was Texas in the 80s. I'm sure things have changed. But yeah, that my mom was a history teacher, and they would draw swastikas on the chalkboard and all kinds of things. So we didn't last super long in Texas.
Interesting. And so when you look at this role, when you went from head of communications to this P&L role, I would think that people really looked at this woman walking in leather pants and were like, okay, so who came up with this crazy idea? Yes?
Well, the interesting thing about that is that I had gotten that every role I had ever taken at leadership role, except this one.
You got what?
The who the heck is this young lady, doesn't deserve to be here. But in this role, the leadership team was, so our CEO hired me and I was working on the executive team, you know, for our CEO. And so I was a known entity, and people actually saw it as our CEO taking someone he trusted and putting them in the business to help them. And they felt comforted by the fact that the CEO must believe in this business if he's going to put Stacey here, and he hasn't given up on us. I think that was very powerful symbolism, and that's the narrative that I heard over and over. And there does become a point, and I think I'm starting to get past that in my life, where your track record speaks for itself. And so folks, they don't see the gender, they don't see the age or the leather pants or whatever it is. They just see the record of success, and that starts to give them hope that something good will happen.
So in some sense, that's been your raison d'etre, which is get the results, which shifts everyone's perspective, and then they really don't care what you are because the results in some ways make it more compelling.
And then I think they realize also it's fun, because I'm hugely focused on the front line, and I'm hugely focused also on having fun at work.
Can you talk about your town halls that you did? Or do you? These are the craziest things I've ever heard.
Yeah, my team, they named it Tank Talks, and it's a virtual
Tank. Okay, Tank Talks. Okay.
So it's a virtual platform where now, of course, everyone's using virtual platforms, but this, you know, wasn't super typical. No one in the company had done this before, where we have a TV studio in our office. So we were downstairs together, but then you could see us on one half of your screen digitally, and on the other half, live Q&A, and we would take the live Q&A after we gave business updates. We always had a fun theme and did a lot of recognition. But the point of doing it, and we started it early on when I joined the organization, is because there was such a deep skepticism that things weren't going to be different. And I was flying all over the country, but I could only be in a few cities every week. So I couldn't hear from everyone with high frequency. I wanted to be able to hear from more people always. And I wanted the leadership team to stand up, sit there and be accountable. And I said, it took probably a year for it to resonate with most of our folks, but it is going to be different. And if you don't like something that we're doing, please say it live on the air and everyone will be able to see it in the comments. We're not hiding anything here. Anything you're worried about, I want you to say it now. We're going to talk about it. We won't always know the answer, but we'll bring it back on the next episode and we'll talk about it. In fact, if you're passionate about it, I'd love to talk to you afterwards so I can get all your ideas about how we could fix that thing. There's nowhere to hide. The buck stops with me. I am here. I am accountable to you. We work for you and it is going to be different. And I think that forum helped us to build trust.
It's beautiful. And it's sort of a classic Stacey thing. Right? I saw some of the costumes you guys were wearing. What was some of the themes of these costume things you did?
Well, one of the things was that we felt like our business was in the Stone Ages. So for Halloween, the Halloween edition, we dressed up like the Flintstones and we said, we're getting out of the Stone Ages. And that was an idea that came from the field. See, the field has all the answers.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
And we even dressed up my little Chihuahua as Dino. She wore a dinosaur costume and she fell asleep on the show and she was snoring into the microphone, which was funny. And we've done, all kinds of New Year's silly things. And we dressed up like Dia de Muertos the year before for Halloween, which was amazing. I love those pictures because they're just enchanting. So we try to have fun. And if you can get the results and people can have fun and they can be learning so they can develop themselves. And then we have lots of good promotions and all those types of things. That's a winning recipe there.
So now you've done all of this as well as you've got 2 kids, yes?
Yes. Now they are 11 and 5.
Okay.
So when we moved down here to Atlanta 5 years ago, I had a little baby, which interestingly, I thought nothing of. The idea of let's just move, I just delivered this baby and down we go, sell a house, buy a house, new organization. But in some ways, babies are so easy to relocate. So yes, they're wonderfully supportive boys and hyperactive, as all parents know how that goes. And my husband as well is extremely supportive. He also has a career and, working full time and all those things. So that's always been an interesting art form to make sure that everyone is feeling like they've got what they need and they're supported. But Sheryl Sandberg, years ago when Lean In came out, she writes many things in there. One of them that stuck with me is that the most important career decision you'll make is picking your partner. And I didn't understand that at 18. I met my husband when I was 18. I had no idea that would be the most important career decision that I would make, but that was absolutely true. Because without his flexibility and support and his good humor with my harebrained ideas of doing crazy stuff, really none of this would work.
And here we are in the lockdown adventure.
Yes, I think we're in day 60 or something in this house. Yeah, welcome to my bedroom.
You're still in love with your husband? Yes?
Yeah, he's a really special guy. I'm extremely lucky.
Your kids are still in one pace?
Yeah, they're good. I think they've enjoyed in some ways this time because we're spending a huge amount of time as a family. We've eaten dinner together for 60 days in a row as a family. They'll probably.
What do you think that's done for you and them relative to the fact you used to be on the road all the time?
It's fun. It's fun to be able to, my 11-year-old likes to go for a little walk around the neighborhood in the middle of the day if I can, if I don't have calls back to back. I would never get to do that before. So I think for sure, there haven't been a lot of surprises, but there's certainly more quality time, which is great.
Beautiful. So any final words, Stacey, from you to those who are listening?
maybe, Nick, we were talking about on email a few days ago, a quote that stayed with me. And it is this COVID-19 time, this pandemic moment, and there's a lot that's unknown, although I think there's so much more that's relatively clear now, which I take comfort in. We're going to be going through a lot of roller coasters for years on this one. So holding the long time horizon is so important. When I was 18, I got certified as a yoga teacher and a personal trainer.
Okay.
And I did that job as a side hustle for a long time, for like 10 years.
Side hustle as a yoga teacher.
Yeah, I know. Then we just call it a job.
The word side hustle and yoga don't usually fit, but that's okay. It's good.
Yeah. So I, did it all through college and then afterwards as well, full time actually for a little while. And when I would teach my yoga classes at the end, I would usually carry a book of poems from Rumi.
Yes, Rumi.
The 13th century Persian poet. And recently I saw one of these memes on the internet with a Rumi quote that really spoke to me during this time, especially in the beginning of all this COVID stuff, because I think that was incredibly anxiety provoking for so many people, and really a feeling of paralysis with friends, and family that you're worried about or that have become sick, etc. So the Rumi quote that has really spoken to me lately is as follows: if all you can do is crawl, start crawling. And that just said to me, okay, stop being paralyzed by this. Just put one foot in front of the other and do whatever you can do, and it's enough. And it's a good start. So if all you can do is crawl, start crawling.
And your purpose is?
To ignite the worthy fight and blow your hair back.
Well, thank you all for, I'm sure you're all equally experiencing this level of, oh my goodness, what a beautiful purpose. Stacey Tank, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.